Hello everyone, welcome to Tabito Stories. This is our 15th episode, and today we have our guest Keith. He's a counselor. He's in the trio program, and he's also a businessman. And he's going to be sharing his story today. Welcome, Keith.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your story?
Yeah, sure. So, like you said, my name's Keith, and I work here at Simpson University. I'm the director of the TRIO program here at the university. The TRIO program is designed for first-generation college students and low-income students and students with disabilities, and just to provide them with some supportive services as they're pursuing their college degrees. So that's what I do. But like you said, I also have a background in business. I have my degrees are in business, and I do business consulting on the side. I work with a lot of small business owners and starting entrepreneurs. Before coming to Simpson, I did that. I started a business that was actually a nonprofit that worked with people transitioning out of homelessness, and we helped them write business plans and start businesses. We had a little incubator that we would put them in and get them some funding, seed funding to start their businesses. So that's a little bit about me, about what I do. You want me to get into the longer story?
Yeah, can you get into it?
Sure, absolutely. So my story is, when people always ask me where I'm from, I always have kind of a mixed thing, just because I've come from a few different places. So a little bit about my story. I'm half Nigerian and half American. My dad's Nigerian, my mom's American. I was born in the U.S., but I actually grew up in Nigeria. So when my mom was pregnant and she was getting ready to deliver me, she flew to the U.S., to her hometown, and delivered, and then took me back to Nigeria. So I actually grew up in Nigeria. I was 12 years old when we finally moved to the U.S., and I went through the process of assimilating to U.S. culture and being in school. I was in middle school and in a very small rural town. So coming from Nigeria to the small rural town it wasn't like a big shock, but it was just different. I had been to America to visit before, but it was just different. And just trying to acclimate to America and to the American culture, and to being new at a school and being in middle school. So yeah, so I did that. That was up in Oregon. And then I moved after I went through high school there. And when I was done with high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. So I packed my bags and I went down to Mexico, and I just traveled around Mexico for a little bit. I went to La Paz and to Guadalajara, Guanajuato, and Monterrey. And just kind of traveled around. I had some friends that were doing exchange student programs, so I would just travel and go and visit them. And then I was about 19 at the time, and I felt the pressure from my family to come back and to go to school. But I didn't know really what I wanted to do in school, but I just felt that pressure to do that. So I came back, started going to school. I went to community colleges. I dropped out of community college. I started working. I worked construction. And I loved working construction. I really did. I love working with, and I still do today. I still have all my tools. I still work on houses. But when I was doing that, I'd work with these guys who were in their 60s, and they're doing construction, swinging a hammer. It's raining and snowing, and I just knew that I didn't want to be 60 and still be doing that. So I tried to go look for other jobs outside of construction, but I couldn't get any jobs because I didn't have a degree. So I went back to school, but I was in school and I still didn't know what I wanted to do there. So I'd be in school for a semester, and then I would drop out and I would go work again, and then I'd go back to school. And it was probably it was 10 years of doing that back and forth before I finally settled down and said, okay, I want to do this for reals. I had in school, when I was going to school, I was just partying a lot. I was taking fun classes. I'd go to soccer class and weight training class and art class, but it wasn't anything like for a specific major. It was just stuff that I thought was fun because I had to be in school. And so I did that for a while, but there was one class that I would wake up every single morning. Didn't matter how late I was out that night. I'd wake up, an 8 a.m. class I would show up to every single time, and it was my business class. And that's when I decided I wanted to be a business major, right? Because that was the one class that really captivated me. Um, and so yeah, so I moved down to Redding, here where we're at, Redding, California, and I actually came to Simpson as an adult student. I was in my late 20s at this point, 26, 27, and I did the degree completion program here to get my bachelor's degree in business. And then I got married, and my wife and I decided we wanted to continue to pursue our education. So we moved down to Los Angeles, and we both did our master's degrees in Los Angeles. And after I did my master's degree down there, also in business, I focused my focus in business was in entrepreneurship. And while I was in grad school, I started with some other people. They kind of launched this program, but really at the very beginning of the program, I got involved, and it was about helping people that were transitioning out of homelessness, how to break through that poverty through entrepreneurship. And so we started this program at the university, and we did it through the university for several years. And then after a while, we established a separate entity outside of the university so basically the university portion of it was more the educational component, and we built a curriculum to teach entrepreneurship. We'd help our clients write business plans, and then after they graduated, they would go into this separate entity, which was an incubator, and we put them in there. We'd raise a little bit of seed capital for them to help them launch the businesses, and then we would walk them through that process of launching the business. It was a model that was based off of the initial micro lending models that you might see, where you are able to loan someone like $200 in the developing country, and they're able to start a whole business with that $200, and they open up their house and they buy some inventory, and their house is now the store. And so we tried to utilize that model, but we realized a lot of things here in the US, in a developed country, that just didn't work, right? And so $200 did not get you all the inventory you needed. You couldn't just open up your house here. There's so many regulations that you have to go through in the US that system didn't work. And then I think intuitively, the people in developing countries just intuitively know what to do with how to start a money. Their issue is more the lack of the resource, that $200. Whereas the clients we were working with, they didn't necessarily know how to run a business. And so we really started to focus our energy on teaching them the business side of it, how to run a business, what they needed to be thinking about. And when they got through that, then we were able to fund them a little bit more. Our funds were anywhere from $500 to $1,000. These were small businesses, but they would have the training to be able to actually run the business, and we would still continue to walk with them through that. We'd help them with all of their branding and their marketing and that kind of stuff. So I did that for about 6 years. It was something very, very dear to my heart, and I've always just had this thing of helping people. And when my wife and I were in LA, we have 3 small girls, and we just decided it was time to leave LA. So we came back to Redding. And then I was also trying to figure out what to do here. I was still doing my consulting on the side, my business consulting on the side. But this opportunity here at Simpson opened up, where it's to help first generation college students and low income college students, which was very close to me as well, the experience that I had going to school, and not knowing what I wanted to do, not having the resources or the support system to help me figure that out. And so this was just a great opportunity for me to step into just things that I love. I love academia, I love school, I love helping people, I love helping people pursue academia and pursue their education. So it's a little bit about my story, how I got here.
That's amazing. That's a beautiful story that you have, that you kind of like you built over time, like being undecided in what you wanted to do, and then like coming into business and helping people, and kind of like through the micro lending. You mentioned about micro lending. What is the biggest difference that you see, in micro lending here compared to a developing country?
So that's kind of like what I was saying is one, just the resources. $200 here will barely get you through the paperwork that you have to do for the government, right? You file your business license and file this and file that, and then you open the business, and then they start taxing you for stuff, and it's just like, that $200 doesn't go very far. Whereas in a developing country, $200 goes a long way, right? You can literally go out and buy, all the inventory that you need for your little store, or depending on where you're at, it might be that you're buying some goats or some chickens or whatever it is, and you're able to raise those and sell the eggs, or sell the babies, and kind of start to grow it. So it's enough to get you going. So that's one of the biggest differences. And then one of the things that we ran into here is that when we tried to say, okay, where is the poorest of the poor here in the developed country, we went to the streets, man. We went to Skid Row in Los Angeles. We went to the shelters down there. But one of the things we found there also was that there's a lot of addiction, right? And so that addiction was also a thing that would hinder our clients. If we were to give them the money, they needed to have gotten through that addiction. And so when we first started, we were just taking people wherever we could find them. And then we started realizing we needed to start working with people who had checked into a shelter, gone through a program, gone through rehab, and had gotten clean and sober, kind of gotten their minds back, and they were at the place where they were leaving the shelters and trying to figure out what's next. And we found that was just a much better group of people that were more ready to step into an entrepreneurship program. So I say that's kind of the biggest differences, I think, for me in looking at the two landscapes of microlending.
Yeah, and kind of like through that, thinking, you mentioned you were doing this in college. Like while you were in college, you were helping like college students, right? Like start their business program.
Yeah, so these were not college students. These were people. We would actually go to the homeless shelters and find people to be a part of the program, and then we would bring them to the university, and we would have graduate students work with them. So each one of our clients would have 1 to 2 graduate students that would kind of be their business mentor and help them through the process. So yeah.
Okay, I see that. And kind of like through that, you brought that experience and you put it into helping the homeless after you got out of college. And what difficulties did you face as you were going through this journey?
Yeah, so some of the difficulties we had just in building the program was that there wasn't really a model for it. The model that we looked at was a model that worked in developing countries, but it didn't really work here, right? And so we went through a lot of challenges with that, of trying to figure out, and honestly it cost a lot of money to figure it out, but that's the reality. Whenever you're doing something that's new and spearheading something, you're the one that's doing all the learning, right? Other people that come behind you are able to glean off of all the learning you do. But for us, the research and development for that was, it cost us money every year, but we had great supporters for the program that believed in the mission, had a heart for the mission, and they continue to support us over the years as we continue to grow the organization, build out our system and our processes to where it was a good working program.
Yeah. Wow, that's a big difference that you have mentioned, like in developing countries, that they have like, you give them like $200 and they're able to start their business right away.
Yeah.
But then you give it to someone that lives in the US. In the US, it's like you say, it's just a paperwork, and somehow the way to get to creating a business is just so much. It just takes so much more time because you gotta go through the legal stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you gotta learn a lot of that.
Yeah.
You gotta go through a lot of that.
We did. When we first started, we were, we literally just first started and said, we raised some money and we said, you want to start a business? Here's some money. And then we watched that money just disappear. And we realized, okay, we need to rethink what we're doing. And we started really building in some processes. And we started to focus our efforts really on entrepreneurship training for this population. So we really trained them on entrepreneurship and business management. And then that took us a couple years to really get that down. But then we started seeing, oh, wow, our clients are graduating from our program. They have legitimate business plans in hand. These businesses are for feasible ideas. They're small businesses. So, people would come in with multi-million-dollar businesses. You're in the wrong place. This is micro business, right? So it's a small business that you can start with under, $1,000, $2,000 at the most. But we started to see that happen. And so we said, okay, we need to go back to square one and figure out how do we start to fund these businesses. So we did, and we went out and raised some more money for that. And we created, like I said, an incubator where we could put them in, because when we first started doing it, we were doing the same type of things 15 to 20 times for different people, right? And we realized, okay, if we just had one spot where people could come to instead of us going all over Los Angeles trying to do it at each location. So we created an incubator that all of our clients could come to, and then we could continue to have the students come there as well to continue supporting them. We would have students from the university that were graphic designers and web designers and photographers. They would help us do product photography, build out the websites, build out the e-commerce store. So it was really good. And for me, I love seeing that collaboration because, you know, the university I was at, it was a very affluent university. But these students there, they really had a heart to serve and to see people who were just coming from really broken backgrounds, overcoming addiction. You know, some of them were formerly incarcerated, and their opportunity after they got out of prison was basically none. For some of them, they couldn't get a job, and so this was their opportunity. And just seeing those two groups of people come together and really develop relationships that lasted even after the program was done, it was just a really cool experience to see. So.
Yeah, that's a really cool experience, bringing the college students, bringing people that know about these things, and kind of like helping the ones that they don't know anything about it because they just came out of drug addiction or prison, and then kind of like coming out of prison, you don't have many resources to go through because you have it in your background, and then you go want to get a job, you can't get it.
Yeah. And then, you know, it was interesting because we had people that were in our program that they went to prison before the internet was invented. You know, so now they're coming out of prison, and the technology that is there and the technology that is required to be able to do a lot of jobs, you know, is like they just didn't have that skill set, so they're really limited. And then obviously having a background, not too many employers are like, oh yeah, come and work for me. You know, there are those, and that's great, but entrepreneurship was really a great avenue for them to be able to find some self-sufficiency.
Yeah. And how do you think this is changing as technology is coming into place? How do you think? What do you think are some difficulties that an entrepreneur may face, like now with the technology, like creating their business?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. There's so many. It depends on what the business is, right? I think that the technology, I think, is not necessarily, in my opinion, the challenge. It's the thing that is actually enabling more business to happen, because the technology that's out there, it makes things easier to do, makes things that were once just dreamed of now possible to do, right? And so I love technology. I'm not an early adapter. I'm not the person that, like, the first time that technology comes out, I have to buy it. I'm not that guy. I'm usually a little bit later, but I love how technology is able to improve people's lives, right? Whether it's their business or their personal life. There's obviously a downside to technology, and I think we see that all the time, and being aware of that. You know, how much time do we spend on our devices, right? And I think that definitely is a downside to technology. And I think, and this is just me, I don't have research on this or anything like that, but this is just me of seeing, you know, the interpersonal relationship. I start to see that lacking a little bit more because people are so used to just being on their devices, you know. And even me as a father and a husband, I have to be very careful about that too. When I'm at home, you know, how much time am I spending on my screen versus how much time am I spending engaging with my children, looking at them in the eye, touching them, playing with them, right? And really getting that ingrained in them. So, yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and yeah, that technology has its benefits. It can create benefits in so many ways, and kind of like in business, there are so many people creating their business through the technology that in such a way it creates a competition.
Yeah,
and absolutely. You know, like if you look at everything nowadays, everything is so spontaneous. Everything is just, you know, like 10 seconds and it can go anywhere. And everyone can see it.
Yeah, and I think technology also has reduced barriers to entry, right? So things that only the big companies could do before, technology, because of resources, technology has allowed the small entrepreneur to be able to do that and access that and be competitive in that space, right? So yeah, I think technology and the various different platforms for so many different things are just allowing the small entrepreneur, and that's what I get passionate about. I love the small entrepreneur, that has this dream, the mom and pop shop, and how do they build it? How do they think through it? Think through all the paces, bring them together, build something, and then start to grow it. Oftentimes when I'm working with entrepreneurs, they see these big companies that they love and they aspire to be, and they think that they have to be that company right then and there. But they have to remember that Amazon, right? Amazon started with Jeff Bezos in his little room, just a really bad little office, but he had a dream and a vision, and that's where he started, right? And even you look at Mac and PCs and all where they started, they started in garages. They had a little bit of resources, but they started small, right? And that's the thing that I'm always having to remind entrepreneurs that I work with, is that you start small, right? And there's Arthur, I forget his last name right now. His first name's Arthur, but he has this, there's this quote that says, you start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, right? And that's what I love to encourage entrepreneurs to do, that to start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, and then start to build. But the key is to get out there and start to do it.
So kind of like through that, like in business, what advice would you give someone when building a team for business?
That's another great question. It kind of depends, but I think one of the biggest thing is identifying what your needs are. What are your real needs? What are your weaknesses, right? And areas that you need to bring people alongside of you. The other thing that I look at is when I'm hiring people, I'm always looking for capable people, not necessarily people who know how to do everything, but they're capable of doing it. So, for example, if I'm hiring somebody and I have to sit there, I'll back up. This is how I like to do it. Is I like to give people boundaries, right? Here are the boundaries. You can't go outside these boundaries. This is the goal of what we're trying to achieve, right? And then I like to release them to be able to do that. And if they need help, I like to be able to help them and figure things out. But for me, having somebody who will go out and do the research and figure things out on their own and reach out to me for help is much more valuable than someone who comes to me and says, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? What do I need to do? We have the internet. You can learn just about anything you want to learn on the internet if you just put the time into research it. And if they're coming to me all the time, and I like people coming to me, but if they're not using those resources that are available to them, then it's not a value add to me, right? So I look for people who are capable of going out there and doing that and just figuring things out. Because oftentimes with entrepreneurship, that's what you're doing. You're just figuring stuff out. Most of the stuff someone has figured out, you just got to go and see what they said about it. So I think that's when I'm building a team, is looking for that big component.
That's a question that I had, because as this meeting is going, like, I have a team, that we're building a storytelling company.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I always ask myself is, do you want to have people that, even though you're the leader,
Mm-hmm.
they can be the leader of themselves too.
Yeah.
Or do you want to have someone that you have to tell them what to do and how to do them? And kind of like thinking about this things sometimes, when you have to tell them what to do, sometimes what you are thinking is probably not the best thing, and you have your own things to do.
Right.
Sometimes when they're the only, they're kind of like, hey, I've been doing this research, and kind of like, these are the things that I was looking at. And these are kind of like the examples, and kind of like they show you like 3 things that they think could be really great, but they don't know what to choose.
Which one to choose? Yeah, they bring you. Yeah, exactly. Bring you options.
Yeah. And that I think that's a team that are leader of themselves. Like, each one of them leaders themselves, and I think that's always a really good thing to have.
Yeah, no, you're right on that.
Yeah. So. And when you came to Simpson, kind of like, being in the trio program, switching into that.
Yeah.
What are some things that, what are some plans that you have in mind in the program?
Yeah, so the program is, like I said, it's designed for first generation college students, low income college students, and students with disabilities, right? The idea behind that is that this particular student group experiences challenges in their college pursuit of degree that some of their classmates would not necessarily experience. So, for example, my experience, right? I didn't have financial help from my parents. I had to figure it out on my own, and I had to work, and I got some grants, and I took a lot of loans out, right? And looking back, that's probably one of the things that I wish I would not have done, is taking out as many loans as I did. But I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't have anyone to tell me about it. That's what they said. Take loans. I didn't have any monies in, so I said, okay, how much can I get? I'll take the full amount. Thank you very much, right? But thinking back about that, I'm like, man, I really should have just taken what I needed to get by to do it, and I could have continued to work and save my money better. So with this program, that's one of the things in my heart, is just to really make sure that the students, they're doing the right thing and wanting to be here, wanting to pursue their degrees, that kind of stuff, but making sure they understand that, especially the financial component of it, and their financial aid, and making sure they're making good decisions that they're not going to have regret later on or have to deal with later on, right? So that's one of the components. And then the other one is just working through the academic system, credits, units, GPAs, all that kind of stuff. That was all like kind of new to me. Like, I mean, I went through high school here, but even then, I didn't really fully get it, you know. And then coming into college, it's a lot different than high school, and just trying to figure out, okay, I have to take this many units to be considered full time. If I'm not full time, then I'm going to lose this financial aid. But I started this class, but this class is the worst class ever, so I want to drop it. So if I drop it, then what do I do? Because I'm going to lose my financial aid, right? And just figuring out just the system of a university and how all of that kind of works, and how the credit system works, how the GPA system works, right? And when for me, because I went to so many different schools, transferring credits from one school to another. Some schools are on a semester system, some schools are on a quarter system, right? And some schools are on a trimester system. So the units and the credits don't all transfer for the same amount, right? 3 credits here, 3 units here is 1.5 units over here, and figuring out how all that plays in. So there's just those kind of things about the college experience that we're here with the TRIO program here to provide. And then for me, again, another big component of the program is just creating a community amongst these students, especially the freshman and the sophomore. You know, and this doesn't have anything to do with TRIO per se, but I think it's even more so for TRIO students. It's just that, you know, you're getting to college, you're leaving your parents' home, you're kind of, if you didn't come here with somebody, or you're not on like an athletic team or something like that, where you already have this built-in group of friends and camaraderie. How do you get connected, especially if you're not a very outgoing person, right? You're not the person that's just like, hi to everybody, right? How do you get out of that shell and make some friends? And so my heart is really to help the student base do that, help them build friendships, build community, do things together, go on educational experiences to experience things that they may not have experienced before, cultural experiences, that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, and you know, like you're talking about, you know, like transferring from classes, like, you know, like moving to another university, and kind of like those things, you know, like as you were mentioning, you know, like the trimester, like the semesters, like the units,
Yeah.
everything transfer. I think when you have someone that can show you those things, and you know, somehow like guide you, like show you, oh, probably you need to take this class, you know, because if you're transferring to this university, then
Yeah.
you need to take.
Exactly. And you know, so for like me, I didn't have the support at home. Like my parents hadn't been through. I couldn't go home and say, hey, what should I do here? So I just, you know, I would drop out of school, right? That's how I dealt with it. And so that's really why we're here, is to be that support system. So.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think it does is like it brings, you know, like it you don't waste as much time as you usually do.
Exactly.
You save time.
Exactly. Which in college, saving time is saving money. The longer you're here, the more it costs you, right?
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, and the TRIO program. How does the TRIO program brings financial like scholarships to the students, or how?
So yeah, that's a great question. So ours does not. It's the TRIO program with some universities are able to provide a little bit of grant aid. It's usually just a couple $100s a year, but that helps. That helps take off the cost of books. Unfortunately, we don't have that here, at least for right now. I'd love to be able to see how we can get that. So it's not so much the financial support that we're adding, but it's the just the knowledge base and the resources and the mentorship that goes along with it, right? And then part of it, we work very closely with the career services. So if a student is looking for they need money, right? And so one of the things that I do is when they come into my office, I sit down and we look at what the cost of school is going to be for them. And then we start breaking that down. How much aid did you get from the school? How much financial aid did you get? Grants, scholarships, all that kind of stuff. Okay, and then what's left? How much do you have to come out of your pocket for, right? And how do you do that? Well, you could either take a loan out, or your parents could take a loan, or you could work, right? Those are ways you do it. So it's trying to figure out, okay, if you work, how's that gonna, and I have a spreadsheet that I'm able to use with them to say, okay, if you work this many hours at this rate, that this is how it's gonna minimize the amount of loan that you need to take, right? And I think that's tremendously important. So then they have an idea of, okay, I need to figure out how to work 13 hours a week or whatever it is. And then we work with our career services. Where can we find a job for you, whether it's on campus or off campus, to be able to cover that, right? And, 13 hours a week is not that long. Even when you're a student, I know it might seem like a lot, and especially when you're a student, you don't necessarily want to be working, especially if your classmates aren't working. But that's the reality that this student population faces, right? And they have to do this. I had to do it. It's just part of it. And the less loans that you can take out, the better you're going to be on the other side of it. So
Yeah. And kind of like as you were mentioning, being a first generation student, you face a lot of those things, and that's something that many times it can be stressful when you have those people that are there for you and tell you like, okay, where are we right now?
Yeah.
And they provide you like, like you that financial guidance into like, okay, if you're getting a job, then at least work 3 hours a day.
Exactly. Yeah, and then how do you fit that into your schedule? Really do time management and fit that into your schedule so you can do it. I think we'd be amazed if we do time management right. We'd be amazed at how much time there actually is to get things done. But there's a law, they call it, or theory or whatever, which is true. It's that whatever amount of time you have and whatever work you have to do, you will use up that amount of time, right? So when you plan things out, you'll actually start to realize that you have more time to do stuff. And time is one of the most, as I've grown older and have a family and have kids that takes up a lot of my time, I realize how valuable time is, right? And also it goes by faster when you get older. So you're like, when I remember when I was 18, 19, even my young 20s, I was like, life just went by so slow. I had all the time in the world, but when I hit my late 20s, my early 30s, time just speeds up. So
Yeah, and like you're saying, like time goes by fast. Like the older you get, because basically the older you get, the more busy you get, the more things you have in your life, and college is basically that step into living the adult life. And if you're able to manage things in the college life, then when you go into your career or creating your business, whatever you do, then because you have been through that, you have done those things, it makes it so much easier to take those hours that you were probably going to class, put it into your project, or put it into your career. And
that's right on, man. That's exactly it. And I like to think of college, it's like adulthood with training wheels. This is the when you come to college, the knowledge that you get at college is good, but also the practical experience of learning how to manage your time, manage your own finances, take care of your life, take care of your personal life, put it all together. And this is where you start to learn that how do you become a professional, right? Before you didn't have to be professional. Now you're trying to get a professional job. How do you be professional? What does that look like? Even from writing an email, what does a professional email look like? Using a calendar, and scheduling things on calendars with professors or other people or groups, all that kind of stuff. It plays right into the work the work world. When you leave here, when you get more experience with that, you can step into a role and have that skill set, so you're not learning it on the job and most likely get fired because you're don't know how to do it, right?
Yeah.
And the boss is like, I just need someone who can make my life easier, and right now that's not making my life easier. So
Yes.
yeah.
That's completely true what you mentioned. And I agree in many aspects. Coming out of college, has- you learn a lot of stuff, and kind of like, like sometimes, like I go on YouTube and there is this person talking about business, and sometimes they say, I could have learned this, sometimes like they say I learn more in YouTube
Yeah.
than in school.
Yes. Yeah.
But sometimes I think they don't really get to see what they really learn in school,
Yeah.
and they're just looking at one aspect, and just because one person said it, everyone says it. And
Yeah.
that's another thing that I think is, if you're an entrepreneur, if you want to make money, then school is to learn.
Yeah.
And you go there because you want to learn something, and you want to become really good at something.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why you go to it. And if you want to build a career, you can go to school. And even if you go to a business, you still learn the same things you do at like outside of school. Like everything is still the same, just you learn a couple of tricks, a couple little keys that help you, like how to do things.
Yeah. I think so. I think you mentioned it in there, but I think that's right on. Like school, there's the knowledge, right, of how to do things, but there's so much more that you're also learning in it. And you were talking about entrepreneurship, and obviously I did an entrepreneurship program for my graduate school. But I do wish that, like, even at undergrad, there was more entrepreneurship, but not just entrepreneurship in terms of how to build a business, but just financial wisdom. Like, how do you make money, right? There's going and getting a job, which is extremely important. Even when I was teaching entrepreneurship with our nonprofit, that was the first thing we said. You've got to get a job, and you build a small business, is kind of your side income, and you work at that and build that up to one day you can drop the job. So I'm all about jobs. Jobs are important. But how else do we generate wealth, right? And if it's the thing about it is, if with a job, you're always trading your hours for income, right? There's only so many hours that you can trade. So how else can you generate income as well, right? And I'm all about that, multiple streams of income. I'm always trying to get my side hustles on to generate other streams of income. So
that's true. That's true. That's for surely true. I have one friend. We made a podcast together, and basically when we started talking, like when the friendship was beginning, he's a businessman, and he's always like on calls. He's always like talking to people on the phone, kind of like managing stuff and a lot of those things. And kind of like through that, one of the things he would tell me is that when someone texts you, you gotta answer them right away, because time is money, and if you don't answer them, then you're letting an opportunity run away.
Absolutely.
That person is gonna go to someone else, and that person is gonna
they're gonna get their need met someplace else. Absolutely.
And who are three people that inspire you, that have been the most influential to you?
Three people who've been most influential to me. So it's interesting because my childhood and my relationship with my parents was not necessarily the greatest growing up, and like any other, I think, young person, I wanted to run away from that and run away from my family, and I did. I packed my bags and I ran as fast and hard as I can. But as I've become an adult and started my own family, I've just gained so much more respect for my parents, right? And my dad, I'll talk about both my parents, but my dad for sure. And he wasn't really the dad that was there, throughout my whole life. But as I've gotten older, just a lot of the values that he instilled in me of hard work, and he's Nigerian. He left Nigeria to come here to the U.S. And worked hard for that, and he ended up going back to Nigeria and starting a business there that's been able to provide for him, and just his love for his family, even though we weren't always always together, just his love for his family. And I think that that's something that's just definitely shaped me and molded me, both in the positive and the negative things that I'm like, I respect that, and things that I'm like, I want to do that differently in my family, you know. But so I think my dad is 100% one of the people who shaped me. My mom is also another person who shaped me. My mom has shaped me. My mom is one of the most compassionate people. She cares for people. She's always trying to make sure everybody's okay and everybody's taken care of. Sometimes it's to her own detriment. It's too much, but it's that thing of just caring for people, right? And I think that that's really helped shape who I am in my desire to care for people and help people and just have compassion for people. And then the third person is actually my wrestling coach. Growing up, my wrestling coach. He was a mentor. He was a father. And there's just things about that I think back about that experience. And this is why I love athletics, is because it teaches and trains a portion of you that you will use the rest of your life, right? Discipline and diligence and hard work and perseverance and overcoming. That is going to translate into the real life, because real life has a lot of lessons that it wants to teach you. And so my coach, I remember my coach, and he was always pushing us to the point where we hated it, right? At the time we hated it. But now as an adult and as a leader, I value that so much, because I realize I have to push people. If they're going to achieve what they're capable of achieving, I have to push them past their comfort zone, right? And I have to show that in my own life of pushing and pushing and pushing, right? So I'm setting the bar up here, knowing that they're going to land here, right? But if I set the bar down here, they're going to end up landing down here. So I'm constantly pushing, and I remember that. I remember one tournament we were at, and it's like we've been training. We're at this tournament. We're it's a tournament now, so now we're like, practice should be done. Nope, we're still practicing. Even after the meet for the day, we're still getting together and we're still drilling. And I'm like, but we've already been practicing. We're here. But no, we kept drilling. And then it starts snowing outside. And I'm like, okay, we're going to get today off. Nope. Get our running shoes on, and we're running in the snow. We're doing push-ups in the snow. And I'm like, this is horrible. But that still sticks with me today, of when things got tough, when for all reasons of why we should quit, we didn't quit. And that still plays into life today, because there's so many things of why I should quit this or quit that, right? And literally those are the memories that I go to of how my coach taught me not to quit just because of a little snow, right? Yeah. So yeah, those are three people that I would say have shaped my life, my belief system, my value system, my work ethic.
Wow, that's a beautiful way of how they have helped you, like put those things into yourself, like like integrate them into like your daily life. And how you live life, like how you do things and how you help like students and anyone that needs help. And that's amazing. And to conclude the show, what we have two more questions.
Sure.
Where can our listeners find you?
Say that again?
Where can our listeners find
Where
you?
can they find us? So the best place to find me right now would be simpsonu-trio.com.
Yeah. And what does art means to you?
What does art mean to me? So that's an interesting question. So I think art means creativity, right? And the expression of creativity. And I think oftentimes we think of creativity just in a quote unquote artistic expression, whether that's a painting or a drawing or photography, or fashion or whatever. But I think that creativity can also translate over, for me especially, and this isn't exactly what you're asking for, but creativity in it being expressed through art is one thing, but I love creativity especially as it's being expressed through business and entrepreneurship, right? You're imagining things that are not there and you're building it. Just like an artist imagines a painting, it's not there yet. They imagine in their head and then they paint it. Or a sculptor, they imagine it and then they sculpt it. And I translate that over to business, and you're imagining something that's not there and you have to build it out, right? So that's more towards creativity, specifically art. I think art is it's an expression of that creativity. It's an outlet of how you express things that are going on inside of you. I think art is a way to step back from the grind of daily work and to just allow this kind of expression, internal expression, to come out in whatever medium that is, whether it's paint or sculpting or fashion or photography, graphic design, you name it. So
yeah. It could be anything, could be business. It's just one of the things that I said last time is that I said it to myself is that if you can make it in a painting, then you can make it in real life. Because if you can sketch it out, even if that's little sticks, then that's enough to have a vision to accomplish something. And it has been a pleasure to talk to you, to have in the show and to share your story.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks, Gustavo.
You're welcome.